I'm Brandon Palaniuk, 2017 U.S. Angler of the Year.
Did Brandon know Aoki before you met?
Yes. We had never met, but I knew who he was. But this was our first face-to-face meeting.
青木さんはブランドのことを知ってたんですよね。He actually saw you fish at the Classic.
2013. Yes, I didn't know that until this week.
So you fished 3 days with him.
Yes.
Can you please go over the tackle you selected and why you selected?
This will be easier. Our main one, the last day on Lake Ontario, was a drop shot. And for me, my drop shot setup, it's called an Alpha Angler. It's a medium light action rod. It's a 610 is the length. And this rod is very parabolic. So it has a light tip, but it bends evenly all the way into the backbone. And the reason for that is that transfers sensitivity down into the blank. And then also when the smallmouth jumps and your rod is loaded down here, he jumps, he can only throw that rod so far. So if your rod is bent, there's pressure on the fish. As soon as that rod goes straight, everything else in that fish's head shake is slacking your line. And that's what causes them to throw the hook. So this rod is a very even bend all the way down. Instead of having a very light tip and a stiff backbone, it's nice and even all the way through. And I'm actually throwing it on a VMC. It's a number 6 Nico hook and a Zoom Z-drop, which is a 4-inch kind of minnow style bait, flat bottom, rounded top. Really does a good job of imitating the gobies and a lot of the bait fish that those smallmouth eat. And then a Daiwa Exist 3000 and Seagar 15-pound smackdown braid, 6-pound or 8-pound Seagar Tatsu fluorocarbon leader, and a 3/8 ounce tungsten drop shot weight. This is the jerkbait that I threw this week. It's actually a Rapala Haymaker is the color. It's a Rapala Shadow Wrap Deep. And I take a black Sharpie and put black lines on it so that it looks like a perch, because a lot of the fish up shallow are feeding on small perch. And so I call this BP's Haymaker Perch. And I throw that on a Alpha Angler slasher. It's also a 610 medium action, light tip and good backbone, 12-pound Seagar Invis-X and a Daiwa Steez A, 7-to-1, and mostly fishing that shallow, less than 10 foot. Quick jerks, pause. Me and Daisuke fish a jerkbait the exact same way. This is what I caught the biggest largemouth on, and this is a bait that I helped design. It's called a Storm Arashi Top Walker, big walking bait, 13 centimeters. And I like it because it's got the 3 hooks, so when they swipe at it, better chance of hooking up with them. On the exact same rod as my jerkbait rod, 610, medium action, Alpha Angler slasher, same exact reel, Daiwa Steez A, 7-to-1 gear ratio. And I've got this with 40-pound Seagar Smackdown braid tied to a 20-pound Seagar Rippin' monofilament leader. So I've got that leader so that it adds a little bit of stretch and it helps keep it from wrapping up in the hooks, because it's a little bit stiffer than the braid. And this is kind of what I fished on some of those shallow points and on the edges of the grass where those largemouth were sitting in the river. And I gotta say, on this bait, it has very flat sides. So when you look at it, very flat. Keeps the hooks down. It goes and pushes a ton of water side to side, but it doesn't roll. So a round bait will roll. It rolls, fish, the hooks are on that side. They eat it, set the hook. So when you have flat sides, the bait moves, and then you set the hook and you hook them. So that's kind of one key feature of that bait. And this is what I caught the next biggest largemouth on. This is a Terminator Walking Frog Junior, so it's the smaller size. And I throw that on a 7.3 medium heavy Alpha Angler Zilla. And very good light tip, so you can make accurate casts. And then very fast action down to the backbone so that you can haul them out of heavy cover. 50-pound Seagar flipping braid, and same reel, Daiwa Steez A 7.1 to gear ratio. And the last one, another one that we fished around the heavy grass, was the Zoom. This is the Z-Hog, and I was throwing it in sprayed grass color. 1 1/4 tungsten weight, bobber stop, and a 4/0 VMC heavy duty flipping hook. And fishing that right in the thickest mats of the covers, places that would kind of make a canopy, and they could sit underneath there in that thick grass. Throwing that on a brand new rod that we actually released last week. This is a 7'11" extra heavy. It's called the Alpha Angler Mag Hitter. So it's just our Magnum version of our flipping stick. And throwing that actually on the Daiwa Tatula 150. It's a 7.3 gear ratio, so a little bit faster, so that I can pick up the slack with those fish when they come out of the mat. And this is also, even though it's a heavy rod, it's also just a very heavy parabolic rod. Similar reason to my drop shot rod. When you set the hook and those fish come up against that mat and then they come out of the heavy cover or the grass, you get slack in your line, and that parabolic action helps keep those fish buttoned so that you don't get slack in your line. I want to ask too, because I was curious on this. Do you tie polymer or Snell?
パラマノットなのかスネイルノットなのかって聞いてます。For flipping?
Yeah.
フリッピングの時です。パラマ。He uses polymer.
He's polymer too? Good.
You do the same?
Yeah. But there's a big debate in the US on which one's better for punching, a Snell or a polymer. Now I get to listen.
We have provided him the primary target fish. This time it's a smallmouth bass. That's how he selected. He wasn't really paying attention to largemouth. So the first rod he picked was the 6.3 light action. That's Abgaroshia D's. His design rod. It's called Bank. That's kind of multi-purpose rod for shore fishermen who cannot carry many rods. That rod does a lot of different jobs. He usually uses 3 to 4 pound fluorocarbon for finesse application. But he studied a lot. US has bigger bass, strong fighting fish. So he chose, his main line is braid. That's probably 12 pound main line. He has a 6 pound leader, fluorocarbon leader. And that's first rod he brought from Japan. He wished he brought more, but due to the spacing, he only had limited rods. His real choice is Abgaroshia MGX 2500 SH. That's the reel he uses primarily in Japan. That's his design. The rod that he caught most fish on, smallmouth bass, that's a Abgarcia Fantasista 6.6 medium light finesse max. His design, of course. Reel of choice was Abu Rocket 2500S. It's a high gear.
Yes.
That's he used for
9-to-1.
finesse application. Line is Vanish Revolution 6-pound fluorocarbon line. He primarily uses 2-pound test in Japan for the same application, but he studied U.S. bass has bigger weight, stronger fight, so he decided to bring 6-pound. He did bring braided line spool as well,
Yes.
but he didn't see a fit, so he decided to choose fluorocarbon for the 3 days, and he caught a lot of fish on. And he observed the way you fish. The way you fish, the drop shot, they're both same, but the fish are completely different.
Yes.
U.S. smallmouths, especially smallmouths, are much larger. So he wanted to use 2-3 pound test line, but he kind of stick with the 6-pound because
Yes.
it was necessary.
Yes.
Oh, the lure of his choice was it's a D style. His design, Toki, yes, 3.8 Tokyo straight. That was his go-to bait. He caught a lot of fish on. Also, there's another bait he called D1, 3.8. He also got, I believe that he caught the biggest fish on that D1 3.8. Yeah, 5.5 pound smallmouth was caught on that bait. He used that rod to throw small bait into the cover. That's what they call the finesse max.
What makes him choose braid spool versus fluorocarbon spool?
ブレードだとやっぱ張りが強すぎてなんていうんですか、ルアーが動きすぎちゃうっていうか操作感が出すぎてやりにくいんですよ。むしろフロロみたいに少し伸びがある方がこう自然と漂わせられるっていうかベイト。P だとツンツンツンとこう。
You want me to translate? You want me to translate that?
Yeah, please.
So what he said is the braided line is not enough stretch, and so when you shake, it pulls the bait away, but the fluorocarbon has stretch, so when he shakes, the bait just flutters, doesn't pull away, and it can stay in one place. So when the fish eat, they're able to suck it down.
Thank you.
You guys want to know what he was saying? That's what he said. Told you we speak the same language.
Yeah, you do.
Some hand movements and some understanding, and it's dialed.
This is his backup rod. Although he wasn't going to fish largemouth, just in case he had it with him. That's a Fantasista D 7.0H. That's the punching rod he uses a lot in Japan. But after he observed the body of water, the lake system, he felt that rod is not good enough, but he didn't have a choice. He used it anyway. The line is Vanish Revolution 20 pound, and he played with a lot of different weights. But lure that he has is the D's, his design. It's a winning crow. It's a punching bait. He's going to prepare his tackle for next season, and he saw your rod, and he kind of have a good idea what he needs to bring. This year isn't good enough.
If he fishes the Central Opens, he'll want bigger rods.
やっぱそうですよね。
Heavy cover. Yeah.
In Japanese cover, that's all you need.
Yeah.
So US is a little bit tougher,
Yeah. Heavy grass.
heavy grass.
Yeah.
触らしてもらったら
He's going to prepare his tackle for next season, and he saw your rod, and he kind of have a good idea what he needs to bring. This year isn't good enough.
あと3本あるんですけど、この2本はちょっとほぼ同じで。
Those two rods, they look different, but inside it's same. That's the rod that he was prepared for top water and bait like that. That's a Gary Hardtail. So going
Gary
to
Yamamoto hardtail.
Gary Yamamoto Hardtail. And yeah, the rod is 610 medium heavy ZX. Reel is Abu Vivo SLX IB8, and that's a KTF tune KTF is Japanese tuning company, and the line is Vanish Revolution 14-pound test.
タックルが、
His last rod, that's a jerkbait rod. Although I didn't tell him to bring, he kind of knew jerkbait is needed.
レボの SFC
Yeah, so he brought it. That's a Abu D's 6.8 medium action ZR. That's the name of the rod. He has the Abu Revo SLC IV7 KTF tuned reel with a Vanish Revolution 12-pound. That's the line of his choice. And the jerkbait he has, it's a wood. It's a special minnow bait that, yeah, it's a wood bait. And he doesn't really get to use, but he brought it anyway, just to see if it fits. And it was the bait that he caught some fish on the first day.
だいぶバレちゃったんですけど
Okay, I'll ask Brandon a question, probably easy one. For the last 3 days, you see him fish. What was your impression?
Yeah. Just kidding. I was blown away at how similar we fish. From the very first cast, when we started throwing a jerkbait, to the very last day when we were throwing a drop shot. And there's like little subtle differences that come based on where we grew up fishing and the size of fish and the pressure and things like that in our selection of tackle. But as far as like how we cast, how we work the bait, all of that is almost identical. And that was really eye-opening to me, and it was really awesome to see. And as long as he can find the fish, he'll be just fine in the opens. Very, very good fisherman. Yes. You're welcome.
First of all, he and we all like to thank you so much for having us for this opportunity.
英語喋れないんで
And you are a fantastic fisherman. He learned a lot from you. I'm going to point out a few things that he mentioned.
まあ今回そのスモールも
Let's begin with the smallmouth.
やってくれたので
U.S. smallmouth, big, strong fighters. Fish are quite different. Japanese smallmouths are much, much smaller. His impression before he arrived here was U.S. fishing is big fish, big tackle, big game. But you presented a lot of different perspectives. You do a lot of finesse fishing, you do heavy fishing, you're very versatile. And you change the tackle quite often, and your judgment is very effective. And he can definitely tell you a superior fisherman, and to become U.S. Angler of the Year, that's what it takes. So he thank you for showing all that. Appreciate it. When it comes to smallmouth fishing, the shooting you showed me yesterday at Lake Ontario, that was somewhat similar to what he does. Tackle is different, but the approach, he finds similarity between you and him. The difference, I guess, would be your experience in U.S. field that maybe gives you much, much better fisherman than he is at this moment. That way you see the field, see the opportunity, switching bait from top water, punching, frogs. He was carefully watching you, and it was very good information for him, and he learned a lot. Yeah, going through 1 year, full season at Elite, that's gonna take a lot of work.
It will.
And yeah, he's going to study more and more. And once again, he thank you for that.
He can call me. Just call me. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any question to Aoki?
Well, I asked some of them. I just had one. Do you use 2-pound test because you think the fish can see, or because the action of the bait, or both?
両方
Both plus casting distance.
Yes, because it's very lightweight, a small bait.
He uses 1.3 gram. I don't know what that is.
Very light. 10 grams is 3/8, 5 is quarter. Yeah, that's small.
So he need 2 pound to cast it and
Yeah.
feel the bottom.
Yeah. And I saw you had small swivel. Is that for line twist?
Yeah, when he uses 2 pound test, you don't have to worry about line twist much. But when he uses 6, you do need a swivel for that line twist.
Okay. Makes sense. I know a lot of guys do that in the US as well. So I was curious.
あやっぱそう
Okay. If you're done, I'm gonna have Aoki ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I may think of another one.
Yeah. We can always go back to that. 青木さんからなんかブランドに聞きたいこと。
タックルで言うと
He is asking you if the field is different, Champlain, Oneida, if you go to South like Texas. If your bait selection is the same, your rod reel line selection will be always the same, or do you use shorter, longer rod for some lakes with the same bait? Would you do that?
I'm very simple. And so when I'm fishing, if I'm punching, it's the exact same setup anywhere I go. And so each one of these rod, line, and reel is technique specific. The only difference is I may, I'm gonna frog with the exact same line everywhere we go. I'm gonna punch with the same line everywhere we go. Same with my top water. It's gonna be the same. I may go to straight mono if I'm catching lots of smallmouth for more stretch. My drop shot, my braid stays the same always, but I may change the size of my leader, 6, 8, or 10 pound test. And my jerk bait, the rod, the reel is always the same. And the reel, or the line, excuse me, I will use fluorocarbon when I'm fishing fast. And usually 10 pound if I want to get it real deep, 12 and even 15 if I want to fish real shallow, because the bigger diameter will help keep it up. But early in the year when it's cold, like 2013 Classic, I throw 8 pound mono because the monofilament floats. And so when you're pausing for a long time, the fluorocarbon, so you jerk, and the fluorocarbon will sink past your bait. And then when you jerk, it kicks the jerk bait up. So if you have mono, it keeps a direct line on long pause and allows it to jerk.
So question from Clue to Aoki was, what was your impression? What did you think about fishing U.S. tournament lake? Oneida, more importantly, Lake Ontario, whatever the bay was.
Yeah.
His answer was, field is way too big, really big. At this time, you took him to point where fish are there. You brought it to him, but he doesn't know that. If he goes to other lake, he has to find the fish somehow, and how concentrated those fish are, or that he doesn't know how much time and effort he have to put in to find the winning fish for the tournament. Those are many uncertainties that he felt more, even more than he came before. Yeah, your point selection was right on. So it was you, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the toughest part, is finding fish and finding the right size fish.
How would you do it?
How would I do it?
Yeah, when you were young, started first time, you don't know, you have to fish the lake you don't know.
So most of the tournaments that I've won are on lakes that I've never been to, which I feel is better. I feel it's better to not get any outside help or outside information, because when you do that, it takes away from your concentration and your focus of what you're confident in and what you like to fish. And so for me, I'm a huge believer in going with your gut feeling. If you're a good enough angler, which he is, you can go with your instincts and where you think fish live and the conditions. One thing that is guaranteed in fishing is that things are going to change. And if you have a 3 or a 4 day tournament, things are going to change. Wind directions, sun, clouds, muddy water, clean water, all those things will change. And for me, it's all about researching a lake and finding places that have everything a fish needs. So spawning habitat, and if it's a lake that has deep water, probably deep water close by that those fish can move back and forth to. And that's really just kind of the biggest thing. And then it's fine tuning into creating that pattern of what those fish are doing, why they are there, so that when conditions do change, that you're able to change with those fish and you know why.
He's asking a question about practice and the tournament fishing. When you spend a lot of time and effort in practicing, you figured it out something. Will those ideas be helpful to the actual tournament? Or because condition changes so rapidly, you have to keep innovating during the tournament hour, maybe minute.
Yeah, you have to, and that's why I say you're better to not have information, because when you get outside help, usually they tell you, like, I caught fish here, but they don't really tell you why, and that was last year, and conditions may not be the same, and even conditions 3 months before can change what stage those fish are in. So if it's a very cold winter, the spawn may be delayed, maybe later, or if it's very mild, warm winter, they may spawn earlier, and that's going to progress things, even the grass levels and things like that. And so for me, it's always being able to adapt and change, and when you get that gut feeling that something is not right and that you do need to change, that you're better off to just go and change, because you can always come back. So if you leave and you go do something else, that's okay, because you can always come back and check those fish again. But don't be afraid to leave and go look for other fish.
They were asking Aoki to analyze the difference between US smallmouth and Japanese smallmouth, and his answer was sizes are fairly different.
Smallmouth.
Yeah, they're big fish, but the behavior is pretty similar. A little bit wilder, you know.
Yeah.
More aggressive, in some sense.
Yep.
Which leads to requirement of stronger tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have. To just give you a little bit Japanese smallmouth bass, they are much smaller.
Yeah.
In size. Also, Japanese smallmouth is put in a much smaller lake with a lot of people in it.
Yeah.
So they're spooky.
Yeah.
So if you see them at the rock pile and you throw a US style bait, most likely Japanese smallmouth won't bite. So it became more finesse application. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. But as far as fish behavior goes, he finds it very similar. So he feels somewhat comfortable fishing smallmouth.
A bass is a bass.
Bass is bass, yes. He was saying, when you shoot, you find fish and shoot and catch. In Japan, when you get ready to shoot, they spook. So fisherman has to forecast how far they, spook off. Then you target them, you cast far, and bring it in.
So I've actually done really well on Oneida doing that.
Okay.
Very, very shallow smallmouth. Swim, make a cast with a drop shot. Swims up, takes off, and then the second cast you cast, and it has to be on the bottom by the time he gets there. If he's swimming and it drops, it's gone. If he's swimming and he's swimming by, and then he comes over and he eats it. So that part is similar. We just didn't see that because of the conditions.
This is the last question for Brandon. Aoki is thinking about coming, challenge open 2019 year. Can you give him any advice?
I would say my first thing would be some of the first advice that I got when I made the elites. And a sponsor told me, put 5 fish in the boat every day and the rest will take care of itself. And at the time I didn't really know what that meant, but now being in the position that I'm in and after fishing 8 years on the elites, I realized that there's much more to just the fishing to actually make a living at it, but still catching fish is one of the most important things, because if you don't catch fish, nobody knows who you are and you're not relevant. The more fish you catch, the more credibility you have. And so catching fish is still the most important thing, but when you catch them, how you react with the media, how open you are and things is what will really boost your career as a professional. On the fishing side of things, he's already a very good fisherman. So from what I can tell, fishing the last 3 days and just from what he's talked about in this interview, the hardest part will be adapting from the finesse techniques to adapt to how some of the fish live in the U.S. But that can also work to his advantage, because he may look at a lake differently and find fish that everyone else overlooks. So to me, that's an advantage that he should use, and something that I feel like a lot of the guys don't have, and for him to use that gives him an advantage. And that's kind of why I say, don't go try to get a bunch of help from people. Do what he is confident in, and don't be afraid to change and keep an open mind. What'd you say?
He has any advice for you. He said he doesn't have it.
Yeah,
He's afraid to say it.
I'll take any advice. I'm still learning.
He wanted to talk to you more, ask you a question when he have questions, but he could not communicate. That kind of frustrated him. But as far as fishing goes, he can feel lots of things. He sees things from his perspective and a little bit from your perspective, so he understands the fishing. But again, the question that he had during fishing, he wanted to ask, he couldn't ask you, and he doesn't have it now.
Must be because we had a bad translator.
There you go. Okay, I'm gonna take a coffee break now.
Well, he speaks more English than I speak Japanese.
Oh, okay.
So he was ahead of me on that. From my perspective of it, it was very humbling and eye-opening to see all of the little things that we did the same. There were a couple points where I caught myself watching both of us fish. It was weird. We're both fishing, throwing a jerkbait, perfectly in sync with each other, and fishing exactly the same. Even though we don't speak the same language, fishing is our language. And so you can take two people from two different sides of the world and bring them together, and there's no difference. We're both human, and we both love and have a passion for bass fishing. And that's why we're all here. That's what brought us together. And it's the little things that I notice, even things that shouldn't even make sense, or that most people may not catch on to, but even just hooking the line, like tying a loop when you don't have a bait on there, hooking it on your reel, and wrapping the line around your rod so that it doesn't get tangled. I've been doing that since I was 10 years old, and he's been doing the exact same thing, however far apart that is. So little things like that, for me, I don't even know what the exact word is for it, but it makes you feel human and a connection that even that first day, we weren't supposed to fish together on the first day, but we decided to take advantage of the weather that we had because we didn't know what the next 2 days were going to be like. And it felt like I was fishing with my team partner from back home. And I think when you take two people that are very passionate and very good at the same thing, language barriers don't matter. That love and that passion for a similar thing supersedes everything else. Like, it goes above and beyond that, and there's a connection stronger than anything else.
So how disadvantage is it for him not being able to speak English during he compete in the tournament? You know, not me being there.
Yeah, from a catching fish standpoint, no disadvantage. The hard part will be understanding or reading signage on the lakes. So, you know, maybe a no wake zone or a no fishing sign. Usually there's a picture, right, that says no fishing, but just small little things like that, or where at the rules meeting, maybe there's a certain size limit or different things on that lake that are specific to that lake that would be difficult to understand. That's the only place that would make it difficult. But really, to catch fish, I've caught a lot of fish and I've spoke a lot of English to them, and they definitely don't speak English.
He will be fishing open next year. I mean, he's planning on fishing, not for sure. But his way of looking at challenging U.S. pro field is he has a long-term view. He's not come here 1-2 years and go home if you don't work. He wants to spend a lot of time and effort and make it work. And he has done it in Japan. He became pro at 20. He's now 35. During these 15 years, he took all the known titles in Japan. And he became Angler of the Year in Japan, and he retired. Now he's ready for the bigger field. So it's a long-term process, he knows. He's not gonna planning to win Classic 5 years from now, but he has a long-term goal to it. You know, he wants to win Classic toward the end of his life, I guess. He wants to work hard, and you know, he is willing to put a lot of effort in it. That'll be it. Thank you so much, boss.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
One more for the press? Yeah, one more. I'm just kidding.